The Beach Boys are not just a band, they are the living myth of a California paradise. Golden sands, endless summers, and perfect harmonies that became the soundtrack to the American dream. But here on the Genre Bender, we know that behind the dazzling light, there is always a deep shadow. While the world danced to their hits, a psychological war was unfolding within the group. Brian Wilson's genius transformed simple pop music into complex symphonies, breaking genre boundaries and challenging even the Beatles. However, the price of this innovation was immense: nervous breakdowns, family tyranny, and a loss of touch with reality. Today, we journey from carefree surf rock to the psychedelic masterpieces that altered the DNA of modern music. This is the story of how the Sunny Boys became hostages of their own image, seeking salvation in the perfect sound. We dive into the story of 20 songs that created and destroyed a legend. You're ready to watch. Get comfortable. Let's go. Next song. I Get Around.
I'm getting bugged driving up and down the same old strip.
By 1964, the Beach Boys had become America's ultimate heroes. But it was at this very moment that Brian Wilson began to realize that touring was preventing him from creating something greater than just songs about cars.
Take my car 'cause it's never been beat, and we've never missed yet with the girls we...
I Get Around became the group's first #1 hit in the U.S., cementing their superstar status. It was a perfect specimen of the band's early style, energetic rhythm, youthful audacity, and those signature multi-part harmonies. The song opened a new era where rock and roll became more complex and heavily arranged.
Gotta find a new place where the kids are hip.
Interestingly, behind the upbeat lyrics about driving around town lay growing tension within the band. Brian Wilson was retreating more into studio work, delegating concerts to others. The song's structure, with its sharp shifts in tempo and tonality, already hinted that this was no mere beach band, but a group of ambitious musicians ready to dictate their rules to the global industry.
My buddies and me, you're getting real well known. Yeah, the bad guy.
Next song.
The sunlight plays upon her head.
Good Vibrations.
It's her perfume through the air.
If a song could ever be called a pocket symphony, this is it. Half a year of work, dozens of studio sessions, and a budget that could have fed a small town. Brian Wilson was searching for the perfect vibrations.
Giving me the excitations, but I'm backing up.
Good Vibrations 1966 is the pinnacle of pop art and psychedelia. Brian Wilson used the studio as an instrument, assembling the song piece by piece from many different sessions. The use of the electro-theremin gave the track an otherworldly, mystical sound that shocked listeners of the time. This was a true genre bend, a pop song transformed into an avant-garde work.
Good vibrations.
The track cost a record-breaking $50,000 at the time. Good Vibrations proved that popular music could be intellectual and experimental without losing its magic. This was the moment the Beach Boys finally stepped out of the shadow of surf rock to become the planet's premier innovators.
Next song.
All the leaves are brown.
California Dreamin'. Sometimes, a cover song performed by great masters finds new depth. In the hands of the Beach Boys, the anthem of the hippie generation turned into an ode to melancholy and a perpetual longing for a lost paradise. The Beach Boys' cover of the Mamas and the Papas classic is an example of how the group could capture the mood of an era. Recorded much later than the original, this version is steeped in nostalgia. Their harmonies here sound denser and even a bit ghostly, emphasizing the lyrics about seeking warmth on a cold winter's day.
And the sky is gray.
For the band, it was a return to their roots, to the image of California, but no longer as a setting, rather as a distant, almost unattainable ideal. It is a reimagining of the folk rock genre through the prism of their signature vocal mastery, making the track a standalone work of art.
Next song.
Wouldn't it be nice if
Wouldn't It Be Nice?
the kind of world where we belong?
The Pet Sounds album began with this bright and innocent hope. But behind the external lightness lay a complex orchestration that Brian Wilson worked on with maniacal precision.
Maybe if we think and wish and hope.
Wouldn't It Be Nice is the perfect opening track for one of the greatest albums of all time. A song about the teenage desire to grow up quickly and be with a loved one. It sounds like an angelic choir. Musically, however, it was a revolution, the use of wall bells, accordions, and intricate vocal interweaving.
We were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long.
Brian Wilson wanted to create a wall of sound that would envelop the listener. The tragedy is that while Brian was building this sonic paradise, he was drifting further from reality into paranoia. The song became a symbol of lost innocence for the band itself and for mid-60s American culture as a whole.
Next song. God Only Knows.
Love you, as long as there are stars above you.
Paul McCartney called this composition the greatest song ever written. It was the first instance in pop music where God was mentioned in a lyric not in a religious sense, but in a deeply personal, almost intimate context.
God Only Knows is a spiritual experience cast in the form of a pop song. Carl Wilson's vocals here reach a transcendental purity. Brian Wilson utilized instruments unusual for the genre, French horns and flutes, to create a Baroque pop sound. It is a song about unconditional love and the existential fear of loss.
You never did, you doubted.
It breaks the stereotype that the Beach Boys are only about dancing on the beach. Here, they emerge as profound philosophers of sound. Every second of this track is calibrated to the millimeter, creating a sense of eternity. God Only Knows remains a timeless standard of how sublime popular music can be.
The life would still go on, believe me. The world
If you like the video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the Genre Bender channel.
Next song.
Ooh, I wanna take you Bermuda.
Kokomo.
There's a place.
In the late 80s, a group many had already written off suddenly returned to the top. But this was a different team without Brian at the center, but with an unquenchable thirst for a summer hit.
Kokomo 1988 became the band's biggest commercial success in decades. Written for the film Cocktail, it restored the Beach Boys to their status as kings of the radio. Despite Brian Wilson's absence from the creative process, the song masterfully exploited the band's old image, the tropics, vacation, and relaxation. It was pure escapism.
Called Kokomo. That's where you want.
Critics often accuse Kokomo of being overly simplistic compared to the experiments of the 60s, but for the history of the genre bender, it is an important case, an example of how a brand can survive and win by adapting to new standards of commercial pop.
And we'll perfect our chemistry.
Next song.
Warachi sandals too.
Surfin U.S.A. Let's go back to 1963, a time when surfing was the primary religion of the youth. This song became the manifesto of an entire generation, even though its melody sparked a serious legal dispute with a rock and roll legend.
Surfin U.S.A. is the foundation of the Beach Boys legend. The song listed the best surfing spots in America, turning a local hobby into a national cult. Musically, it was based on Chuck Berry's hit Sweet Little 16, which later led to legal proceedings. However, it It was the Beach Boys who added their unique harmonies to this rhythm, making the sound sunnier and smoother. It was a perfect product of its time, energetic, optimistic, and relatable to every teenager. This song began the group's ascent to the top, and the image of guys with surfboards became both a blessing and a curse for years to come.
Next song,
Grandfather and me
Sloop John B.
got into a fight. Well,
Brian Wilson took an old folk song about sailors and turned it into an avant-garde masterpiece. It was the moment where folk traditions met insane studio perfectionism.
broke in the captain's drum.
Sloop John B became a key element of the Pet Sounds album. At Al Jardine's request, Brian reworked a traditional Bahamian song. The result was staggering. Layers of vocals were stacked upon one another, creating incredible depth. The lyrics about homesickness and the desire to escape problems took on new meaning in the context of the album.
Well, I feel so broken. I wanna go home.
It was a cry from Brian himself, weary of the pressures of fame. The instrumental part, featuring flutes and jangling percussion, made this one of the most recognizable tracks in the band's discography. It's a prime example of folk material becoming the basis for high pop culture.
Say other names and call for the captain ashore.
Next song, Don't Worry, Baby.
But I keep thinking something's bound to go wrong.
Brian Wilson wrote this song as an answer to Phil Spector. He was obsessed with surpassing his idol's wall of sound, and in this ballad, he came as close as possible to his goal.
Don't Worry Baby 1964 is one of the group's most tender yet anxious songs. Behind the lyrics about car racing and a girlfriend's consolation lies Brian's own deep insecurity. The vocals here sound almost fragile. The melody is so perfect that it is still considered a benchmark of pop composition.
Well, it's been building up inside of me for
Brian Wilson admitted that this song was his attempt to reach the greatness of Be My Baby by the Ronettes. In the end, he created something entirely unique, a melancholic rock and roll song where fear and hope intertwine in a perfect vocal chord.
Next song,
Those styles they wear and the
California Girls.
waters, they all make you feel alright.
After a trip to Europe, Brian wanted to write an anthem for all the women of the world, but through the prism of the California sun. Thus was born the song with the most recognizable orchestral intro in pop history.
I've been all around this great big
California Girls is a triumph of arrangement. A psychedelic, almost symphonic intro abruptly shifts into a jaunty rhythm, creating the effect of a bright sunstroke. Brian Wilson wrote this melody during his first LSD experience, attempting to capture the grandeur of the American landscape.
southern girls with the way they talk, they knock me out when
The lyrics celebrate girls from all over the country, but invariably return to the Californian ideal. It is a classic where the Beach Boys demonstrate their ability to make music that is simultaneously accessible and incredibly complex. The song became a style icon and remains one of the group's primary symbols.
world I see all kinds of girls. Yeah.
Next song, Do It Again.
the beach was the place to go.
In 1968, while the world was going mad for psychedelia, the Beach Boys decided to look back. This song became a piece of nostalgia for a time when everything was much simpler.
Make sure nighttime's warm.
Do It Again was a conscious attempt by the group to return to their surf roots after complex experimentation. The song sounds like a greeting from the past, but with a heavier, more modern production for the late 60s. Mike Love and Brian Wilson worked in tandem here once again to create an anthem of returning to one's origins. It was an important moment for the band and acknowledgement that their old image still held immense power, even if they themselves were no longer those boys on the beach. The track became an international hit and proved that the Beach Boys' magic could survive any fashion trend.
Next song. Surfer Girl. The first song Brian wrote entirely on his own from start to finish. It was the birth of his creative voice, pure, sincere, and infinitely melodic.
Surfer Girl 1963 is a doo-wop style lullaby. Brian Wilson wrote it when he was only 19, inspired by his love for his girlfriend and the ocean. There are no complex orchestrations yet, but one can already feel the incredible melodic gift that would make him a legend.
Thank you so very much. Thanks a million. Right now we like to do...
The group's harmonies sound particularly soft here, creating the atmosphere of a summer evening on the shore. This was the first recording where Brian officially acted as producer, taking control of the process. The song became a standard for romantic surf rock and showed that behind the drive of Surfin U.S.A. stood the delicate and vulnerable soul of a creator.
Next song.
Time will not wait for me.
Breakaway.
The love that passed me by.
The late 60s were a difficult time for the band. They were trying to find a new path, and this song became a symbol of their desire to break free from creative stagnation and family bonds.
When I lay down on my bed, I heard
Breakaway 1969 is a hidden gem in the Beach Boys' discography. Written by Brian together with his father, Murray Wilson, under a pseudonym, the song sounds like a manifesto of freedom. It carries the influence of soul and the contemporary pop sound of the era. Although the track didn't become a massive hit in the US, it was very popular in Europe.
I found no reason why.
It was one of Brian's last attempts to actively participate in the band's life before his long retreat into the shadows. The song is filled with light and energy, a reminder that even in the darkest times, music was the only way for the Wilsons to communicate with the world. If you liked the video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the Genre Bender channel.
Next song.
Singing along. Are you ready to sing out?
Help Me, Rhonda. This track went a long way from a failed first version to the status of one of the band's most recognizable hits. The secret was simple. It just needed a bit more drive and the right rhythm.
Rhonda, you look so fine.
Help Me, Rhonda became the group's second #1 hit. The road to success was not easy. Brian rewrote the arrangement several times until he found the perfect balance between a pop melody and rock and roll zest. Al Jardine's lead vocal gave the song a grounded, honest feel. The lyrics about trying to forget one girl with the help of another resonated with every listener. Instrumentally, the song is rich with guitar fills and energetic piano. It was a classic Beach Boys hit that confirmed they could consistently produce top-tier material while maintaining a connection with a mass audience.
Next song. Darlin. Brian Wilson always loved R&B and soul. In this song, he embodied his love for black music, creating one of the most energetic and driving tracks in the group's history.
Darlin 1967 is pure soul joy and energy. The brass section gives the track a powerful, almost Motown-esque sound. Carl Wilson's lead vocal is magnificent here. He sings with unprecedented power and passion. The song was originally intended for another group Brian was producing, but it eventually became a highlight of the Wild Honey album.
Know what you
This was an important step towards simplifying their sound after the dense productions of Pet Sounds and Smile, showing that the Beach Boys could be organic in more earthy genres while retaining their vocal superiority.
Next song. Getcha Back. The mid-80s demanded new sounds. The band decided to return to the theme of old love using modern synthesizers and drum machines, while still preserving their eternal harmonies.
Getcha Back 1985 was an important comeback for the band in the MTV era. The song successfully blended classic Beach Boys vocal techniques with modern 80 seconds production. Mike Love acts here once again as the primary ideologue for returning to the summer mood. The music video was on heavy rotation on television, reminding a new audience of the legends of the past. For the genre bender, this is an example of how old-school bands tried to fit into the world of neon lights and synths by successfully exploiting nostalgia.
Next song. In My Room.
In my room.
Behind the external glitter of fame, there was always a need for solitude. This song is Brian Wilson's most personal confession, his anthem to safety and silence in a world that demanded too much of him.
In My Room 1963 is an intimate masterpiece. In this ballad, Brian Wilson first spoke openly about his inner world, the room where he could hide from the fears and pressure of his despotic father. The harmonies here sound almost like church hymns. It is one of the most honest and vulnerable songs in pop history, becoming an anthem for all outsiders and introverts. Musically simple but emotionally bottomless, In My Room showed that the Beach Boys were capable of deep psychological reflection, setting them apart from other bands of the time.
Next song. Do You Wanna Dance? Dennis Wilson, the only actual surfer in the band and its primary rebel, took the lead vocals on this cover. The result was raw, energetic, and very real.
The Beach Boys' cover of Bobby Freeman's hit was one of the most dynamic moments of their early work. Dennis Wilson gave the song the necessary dose of rock and roll swagger. Brian Wilson, in turn, transformed a simple dance song into a powerful sonic flow with heavy percussion and multi-layered vocals. The track opened the Today album and set a high-energy bar. It was an example of how the band could take any standard and make it theirs, infusing it with signature California drive.
Next song. Lady Lynda.
With me, we can lie under Green Canyon bed.
Jardine always gravitated toward classical forms. In this song, he drew inspiration from the music of Bach, creating one of the most beautiful and melodic ballads of the band's later period.
Lady Lynda 1979 is a dedication to El Jardine's wife. The song begins by quoting a classical Bach melody, giving it a sense of solemnity and nobility. It became a huge hit in the UK, where the classic Beach Boys sound was always particularly valued. This was an example of how the band continued to seek new sources of inspiration beyond pop standards. Lady Lynda demonstrates the collective's maturity and their ability to create quality adult music while remaining true to their vocal traditions.
Next song.
Ain't gonna tell me what to do.
Tears in the Morning.
Blinding the eye.
Bruce Johnston, who came in to replace Brian on tour, contributed to the band's history with this melancholic ballad. It was 70s music in all its glory, sad, soft, and very personal.
Hope you love the baby I'm never gonna see. And I've got
Tears in the Morning 1970 is soft rock at its finest. Bruce Johnston wrote and performed this song, adding European chic and orchestral scale to the Beach Boys' repertoire. The use of the accordion gives the track a Parisian flavor.
my heart believes in what you chose.
It is a song about a breakup and mourning sorrow that fit perfectly into the melancholic mood of the Sunflower album. It showed that there were other talented songwriters within the group capable of creating hits without merely copying Brian Wilson's style. It's a beautiful conclusion to our selection.
Tears in the morning.
The Beach Boys traveled a path unlike any other band. From carefree songs about surfing to complex symphonies that changed the world. Brian Wilson and his brothers gave us not just music, but an entire philosophy of sound where harmony was a means of survival. We have seen how personal tragedies and a frantic creative search lay behind the sunny facade. Their legacy is a reminder that true beauty is often born from pain and chaos. Thank you for being with us on the Genre Bender. Explore the music, seek the hidden meanings, and stay on the wave of true legends. See you in the next video.
If you liked the video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the Genre Bender channel.